The village was nestled between rolling hills. A gentle river flowed through it. It was idyllic, peaceful, the perfect place to raise a family. The villagers were simple folk. They worked hard. They were deeply religious. They believed in good neighbors. They believed in keeping their doors locked at night. The village was a place of traditions, stories passed down through generations, whispers of ancient legends, warnings about the creatures that lurked in the shadows, but the villagers kept to themselves. They didn't welcome outsiders, and they never spoke of the darkness that whispered just beyond the tree line. The 7 little lambs lived in a charming cottage nestled in the heart of a lush green forest. Their fleece was as white as freshly fallen snow, glistening under the warm sun. Their eyes sparkled with mischief, always ready for the next adventure. They were the picture of innocence. With their playful antics and gentle demeanor, every morning the lambs would scamper into the meadow, their tiny hooves barely touching the ground. They would frolic among the wildflowers, their laughter blending with the songs of birds. They would chase butterflies under the watchful gaze of their mother, who kept a close eye on them. Their laughter echoed through the valley, a sound of pure joy and freedom. Life was simple for the lambs, filled with the beauty of nature and the warmth of family. Their days were filled with play, and their hearts were light and carefree. Their nights were filled with their mother's bedtime stories, tales of wonder and wisdom. They knew nothing of the world beyond their meadow, a world full of unknowns and dangers. They knew nothing of the darkness that lurked in the hearts of wolves, but their mother knew all too well. She had heard the whispers, the hushed warnings carried by the wind. She had seen the shadows moving stealthily in the distance, always on guard. She knew that innocence could be shattered in an instant, and she was determined to protect her little ones. One day, a stranger arrived in the village. He was tall and imposing. His eyes were dark and piercing. He carried himself with an air of quiet authority. The villagers eyed him with suspicion. They whispered behind cupped hands. They warned their children to stay away, but the stranger paid them no mind. He built a small cabin on the outskirts of the village. He kept to himself. He spoke little, but there was something about him, something unsettling, something that made the villagers uneasy. The lambs, however, were curious. They'd never seen anyone like him. They would peek at him from behind trees. They would whisper about him in hushed tones. They were drawn to him. They couldn't explain why. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. The stranger, who introduced himself as Mr. Wolf, began to integrate himself into the village life, slowly but surely. He helped the elderly with their chores, always with a smile on his face. He played games with the children, bringing laughter and joy to their days. He even attended the village church, participating in the community's spiritual life. The villagers slowly began to warm up to him, their initial wariness fading away. They dismissed their initial suspicions, convinced that he was harmless. They convinced themselves that he was just a lonely traveler seeking companionship, nothing more. But the lambs couldn't shake the feeling of unease. They noticed things, small, unsettling things that others overlooked. Mr. Wolf would often stare at them with an unreadable expression in his eyes, making them feel uneasy. He would talk to himself in hushed tones, as if conversing with unseen entities. And sometimes, late at night, they would hear strange noises coming from his cabin, sounds that sent shivers down their spines. Their mother tried to reassure them, telling them it was all in their imagination. She told them that they were just being silly, that there was nothing to worry about. But deep down, even she couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right, that something was amiss. The whispers in the wind seemed to grow louder, carrying secrets and warnings. The shadows seemed to grow longer, stretching ominously as the days went by. And the lambs couldn't help but feel that something terrible was about to happen, a sense of impending doom hanging over them. The full moon hung heavy in the sky, bathing the village in an eerie silver glow. It was a night unlike any other, where the usual tranquility of the village was replaced by an unsettling stillness. The night was deathly still. Not a single sound could be heard, not even the chirping of crickets or the rustling of leaves. Not even the wind dared to breathe. The trees stood motionless, as if frozen in time, adding to the eerie atmosphere. Inside their cottage, the 7 little lambs huddled together in their beds, their eyes wide with terror. They clung to each other, seeking comfort in their shared fear. They had seen Mr. Wolf, his eyes glowing in the moonlight, heading towards their cottage. The door creaked open, sending shivers down their spines. A long, dark shadow stretched across the floor. It moved slowly, deliberately, as if savoring the fear it was causing. The lambs held their breath, their hearts pounding in their chests. They could hear the sound of their own fear, loud and overwhelming. A low growl echoed through the room. It was a sound that promised danger, a sound that made their blood run cold, and then everything went black. The darkness was absolute, swallowing all light and hope. The next morning the village awoke to a deafening silence. The usual morning bustle was absent, replaced by an eerie calm. The lambs' cheerful laughter, which usually filled the air, was gone. The village felt empty, as if a part of its soul had been taken away. Their mother's frantic cries echoed through the empty streets. Her voice was filled with despair, a sound that broke the hearts of all who heard it. The villagers gathered at the edge of the forest, their faces pale with fear. They looked at each other, their eyes filled with a shared dread. They knew, without a word being spoken, what had happened. The truth was too terrible to voice, but it was understood by all. The big bad wolf had come to their village. His presence was a dark cloud that loomed over them, a threat that could not be ignored. And innocence, once lost, could never be regained. The village would never be the same again, forever changed by the events of that fateful night.